Alright, so the title of this activity is comparing points on a line. So we've got 4 different points, M, N, P, and R. And we have a few different questions involving these different points, and we're going to, like the activity says, compare them. So, first question we have is, which values are greater than N? So here's N. And once again, what numbers, how do we know that a number is larger than another when looking at a number line? Anything to the right of that number is larger. So P and R are greater than N because they are to the right of it. And if we wanted to write those as inequalities, P is greater than N and R is greater than N. Good to just get the practice in of writing inequalities. Which values are less than P? So once again, if numbers to the right are greater, then numbers to the left of something would be less than. So here's P. To the left are M and N. M and N are less than P because they are to the left of it. Once again, as inequalities, M is less than P, N is less than P. Alright, so next, assuming each increment is counting by 1, what number would be the opposite of M? Okay, so M's the first one. This one was actually already answered for us. So it says the opposite of M would be 5. So let's look at Y. So here's M. So it says assume each increment is counting by 1, which up to this point, for the most part, all of our number lines have been doing that, but like we're going to see on the next page, that's not always true. But in this case, since that is a thing, it's telling us that, and this would be -1, this would be -2, -3, -4, and -5. So if M is -5, the opposite of it would be 5. So, and I already labeled this, so if N is -2, once again, that's 2 spaces away from 0 to the left, and the opposite of it, opposite of -2 is 2. So 2 would be the opposite of N. Alright, and now we've got P and R. So P is 1. I'll just label these all out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if P is 5, if P is -5, or, as we actually figured out before, M is -5. So N is the opposite of P. And if we want to talk about what number it is, M is -5. So both of those would be fine answers here. And then R, the opposite of R. If R is 8, its opposite is -8. So once again, opposite numbers are the same distance from 0. So whether it's, so if we think about -2 and 2, this is 2 to the left of 0 and 2 to the right of 0. 8 is 8 units to the right. This is 8 units to the left. Okay, so opposite numbers are numbers, they have the same number. One's positive, one's negative, and they are both an equal distance from 0. And which values here are negative? Pretty easy. Anything to the left of 0 is negative. So M and N are negative because they're to the left. of 0. Alright, so now we're at the next page. So now, the next page is a little bit more complicated, as I mentioned on the previous page. So, a lot of times, increments are just 1, 2, 3, it just counts by ones. But that's not always true, alright? So, for this one, it says, tell what the value of each point would be if P is 2.5, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So then what you can do is to identify increments, you must count the spaces to a point, and then you need to divide that point by the number of spaces. So for instance, here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 increments away, and it is equal to 2.5. So then we need to do 5 divided by 2.5, or 2.5, which, oops, sorry, actually I did it backwards, my bad. 2.5 divided by 5, which is 1/2. So that means that each increment is equal to 1/2. 1/2, 1 whole, 1.5, 2, 2.5. So we can see that if we actually count, then it would work that way. So then going backwards, let's say that we know that each point is 1/2, then this would be -1/2, -1, -1.5, -2, -2.5. N would be -1/2, -1. R would be 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. Alright, so now for the next one, it says N is -4. Okay, so now we, like I said before, we need to count the number of spaces, so that's 2 spaces over, and then we need to divide its value by how many spaces it was. So -4/10 divided by 2 is 2/10. So each increment is 2/10. So M, 2/10, 4/10, 6/10, 8/10, -1. P, so each increment is 2/10, 2/10, 4/10, 6/10, 8/10, 1. Positive 1. And R, 2/10, 4/10, 6/10, 8/10, 1 whole, 1 and 2/10, 1 and 4/10, 1 and 6/10. Alright, so now for the next one, R is 200. And R is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units away. So then we need to take its point, which is 200, and divide it by 8 to find out what each increment should be. And 200 divided by 8 is 25. So each increment then is counting by 25. So my bad for not putting that up here. So then in this case, if everything is counting by 25, this would be -25, -50, -75, -100, -125. N would be -25, -50. P would be 25, 50, 75, 100, 125. And now for the final one, M is -15. Okay, so M is -15. and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces back. So that must mean that each increment we're counting by 3s. So then n would be -3, -6. P would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And R, I know, is 8 units. And if I'm counting by 3s, then that would be 24. So once again, it's important to note that your increments are not always counting by 1s. Your intervals could be counting by 2/10, or by 25, or by 3. In order to figure out the increment, you need to have a value and know how many increments it took to get there. So if R is 200 and it's 8 spaces away, then that means each space is equal to 25. And you can count by 25s to find your other values. Right? Just like how here, P was 2.5, and it was 5 spaces away. So you take 2.5 and divide it by 5 to find out that each increment is 1/2. And so finally, for our big ideas, really simple one here. To order rational numbers from least to greatest, we list them in the order they appear on the number line from left to right. For example, we can see that the numbers -2 and 7/10, -1 and 3/10, and 8/10 are listed from least to greatest because of the order they appear on the number line. Once again, from left to right. And the big ideas to copy down are numbers towards the right on a number line are always greater than those to the left. And another one that we didn't really talk about, we did do some talking about opposite numbers today. There is a special rule. 0 is a very special number because it is not positive or negative, and it is also, because it is neither of those, it also does not have an opposite. So the opposite of 0 is 0. Just something to think about going forward.